There are moments in life when something shifts, quietly, silently, unexpectedly. You don't announce it, you don't even fully understand it, you just feel it, a pressure building inside your chest, a restlessness, a pull, a whisper that keeps returning. You were not meant to stay where you are, and that's why you're hearing this right now. Life has a way of calling you before you feel ready. It nudges you toward the path you've been avoiding, the path that requires honesty, the path that requires courage, the path that demands you confront the parts of yourself you've kept hidden, buried, or dismissed as not important. But you know they are. You've always known. You are not stuck because your life is small. You are stuck because your vision has been dimmed by fear, doubt, and the belief that change must be dramatic or perfect. But change doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives in small recognitions. This moment, this message, this pull inside you that says something is about to shift. You are standing at the edge of a personal turning point. And the truth is, your life begins to transform the moment you choose not to turn away from yourself anymore. You are not waiting for a sign. This is the sign. There is a future version of you, more grounded, more awake, more courageous, reaching back toward this very moment. Not to save you, but to remind you of what you once forgot. You were built for growth. You were built for expansion. You were built to evolve. You don't have to know every step. You just have to take the next one. The old version of you may cling because endings feel like death, but every transformation begins with the decision to stop negotiating with the old life, to stop shrinking to fit into spaces you've outgrown. To stop pretending you don't feel the call towards something larger. Right now, everything is aligning in ways you cannot yet see. What looks like chaos may actually be rearrangement. What feels like loss may be clearing. What seems like stagnation may be preparation. Your life is not falling apart, it's falling into place. But you must meet this moment. You must say yes to the pull that scares you, yes to the change that feels overdue, yes to the future that is trying to reach you. The shift begins with a single decision. I will not abandon myself anymore. And when you make that choice, truly make it, everything changes, everything opens, everything accelerates. This is that moment. Step into it. Transformation begins quietly, in the soft spaces of your life where no one else is looking. It doesn't erupt with dramatic announcements or grand gestures. It whispers in moments you usually overlook. It shows up in the sudden discomfort you feel in places that once felt familiar. It hides inside the questions that appear in your mind late at night, the quiet wondering if there is more to your life than the routine you've been repeating. This is how change introduces itself, subtly, slowly, and often without your permission. You rarely recognize the beginning while you're in it, because the beginning feels like confusion, restlessness, or a strange urge to reevaluate everything you thought you understood about yourself. But this is exactly where transformation plants its roots. The earliest phase of inner growth often looks like tension, not the loud kind, but the gentle pressure that something within you is no longer aligned with the life you're living. You may not know what needs to change, but you can feel that something must. This quiet discomfort is not a sign that you're lost. It's a sign that the old version of you is dissolving. A deeper part of you is awakening, asking to be heard. And because this awakening is subtle, you might try to ignore it at first, thinking it's just your mind wandering again. But each time you silence it, it returns with more truth, more clarity, more insistence. Transformation begins when you start noticing these small shifts and understanding that they are not accidents. The things that once satisfied you no longer do. The habits you once relied on feel heavy. The relationships that kept you grounded may now feel limiting. The dreams you buried years ago begin resurfacing for reasons you don't fully understand. And although you may feel guilty, uncertain, or unprepared, something in you knows that this quiet internal movement is leading you somewhere meaningful. This early stage of change is delicate because it challenges you to trust what you feel more than what you can explain. You don't have evidence yet, you don't have a clear path, you only have a subtle sense that life is asking you to evolve, and even though the world around you might remain the same, something within you has already shifted. That is where transformation truly begins, in the silent, invisible moments, when your inner world starts expanding long before your outer world catches up. Your future self is calling you forward long before you feel ready to move. There is a version of you that already exists, a wiser, braver, more grounded expression of who you are becoming. This version of you has already walked through the fear you're currently standing in. It has already faced the doubts, the insecurities, the shadows you keep avoiding. And from that place of deeper clarity, it reaches back toward you, not with pressure or impatience, but with a quiet invitation: keep going. This call isn't loud, it doesn't demand your attention. It lives inside your instincts, your curiosity, your longing for something greater. Every time you feel drawn toward a new direction, every time you feel a spark of possibility, every time you sense that your life could be more than what it is right now, that is your future self trying to guide you. This guiding presence often appears in the form of intuitive nudges, moments that don't make logical sense but feel emotionally true. You may feel pulled to leave something behind even when it's comfortable. You may feel compelled to explore something unfamiliar even when it scares you. This pull isn't random, it is the beginning of alignment. The future version of you knows what you are capable of, even when your current self doubts it. It reminds you that growth always happens just beyond the boundaries of certainty, and because your future self sees the path more clearly than you do, it communicates through feelings instead of instructions. It speaks through subtle knowing, through the sensation that you're meant for something more than survival, more than routine, more than the limited identity you've carried for years. Sometimes this inner calling feels like resistance, not because you're moving in the wrong direction, but because the old version of you is reluctant to let go. Change requires you to release the parts of yourself that have kept you safe but small. Your future self gently insists that safety is not the same as fulfillment. It encourages you to step toward the life that matches your potential, not the one that matches your fears. The call of your future self is a promise that there is more waiting for you, more purpose, more alignment, more truth. And even when you can't see the full picture, you can feel the pull. That pull is real, that pull is direction, that pull is the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming. You don't need clarity, just courage, because waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect understanding is how dreams quietly die. Clarity is something you earn by moving, not something you receive before you begin. Most people hesitate because they believe they must see the entire path before taking the first step. But life has never worked that way. The truth is, the path only reveals itself to those who are willing to walk into the unknown. Courage is what opens the door. Courage is what turns possibility into progress. And courage is what frees you from the illusion that you must have everything figured out before you start. When you demand clarity before action, you trap yourself in endless thinking, analyzing, and imagining all the ways things could go wrong. You build walls made of doubt and fear, convincing yourself that the timing isn't right or that you're not ready yet. But readiness is not a requirement for transformation. Willingness is. The moment you choose to move, even without certainty, something inside you wakes up. You begin to see opportunities you couldn't see before. You start noticing the next small step, the next clue, the next door that opens. This is how life works with you, not ahead of you. It responds to movement. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision that fear will not lead your life. It is choosing to trust something deeper than your doubts, trusting your instincts, your resilience, your inner strength. Courage means stepping forward even when your hands shake and your voice trembles. It means acting not because you're confident, but because your soul is tired of staying the same. And each brave step you take builds a momentum that clarity alone could never create. The moments that change your life don't begin with certainty, they begin with a bold leap into uncertainty. You only realize you're capable after you start. The insights come after the action. The answers appear after the commitment. Courage is the bridge between the life you have and the life you want. It's the fuel that keeps you moving when the path is dim and your faith is fragile. You don't need perfect vision to begin. You don't need guarantees. You just need the bravery to take one step and then another, and trust that clarity will rise to meet you once you've shown life you're willing to walk forward. You must confront the parts of yourself you've avoided, because the pieces you hide are the very pieces that hold the power to transform you. Every fear you suppress, every insecurity you pretend isn't there, every memory you push away, they don't disappear. They simply move into the quiet corners of your mind, influencing your choices from the shadows. You can feel them every time you hesitate, every time you sabotage your own progress, every time you shrink because you fear being seen for who you truly are. Avoidance may feel like protection, but in truth it becomes a cage, and sooner or later, life brings you back to the doors you refuse to open. Facing yourself is not an act of punishment, it's an act of liberation. It means allowing yourself to acknowledge the truths you've denied, not to drown in them, but to understand them. The emotions you've tucked away are not your enemies. They are unexpressed stories waiting for resolution. The patterns you repeat are not proof of failure. They are unlearned lessons waiting for your attention. When you finally turn inward and look directly at the parts of yourself you fear, you begin to reclaim energy, confidence, and clarity you didn't realize you'd lost. This confrontation is uncomfortable because it strips away the illusions you've used to feel safe. It requires honesty about your wounds, your flaws, your mistakes, and your unmet needs. But it also reveals your strength, your resilience, and your capacity to grow. You cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot heal what you pretend isn't hurting. You cannot evolve while clinging to the version of yourself that hides behind avoidance. Growth demands visibility, not just to the world, but to yourself. When you explore the deeper layers of your inner world, you start to understand why you react the way you do, why certain experiences trigger you, and why some dreams feel so difficult to pursue. You begin to differentiate between the voice of fear and the voice of intuition. You start replacing self-judgment with compassion, and gradually the parts of you that once felt like burdens transform into sources of wisdom. Confronting the avoided parts of yourself is the doorway to becoming whole. It's where you stop running, stop hiding, and stop fighting your own reflection. It's where you finally allow all of you, not just the polished parts, to be seen, understood, and guided toward a more authentic life. What feels like falling apart may be alignment, because life often rearranges itself in ways that don't make sense until much later. When things collapse, when relationships shift, when routines break, and when the familiar dissolves, your first instinct is to assume something is going wrong. You feel out of control, unsteady, and unsure of what will come next. But sometimes the things that crumble are the very things holding you back from the path you're meant to walk. What looks like chaos is often life-clearing space, removing what can no longer support who you are becoming. In moments of unraveling, it's natural to feel afraid. You may believe you're losing pieces of your identity, your stability, or your sense of purpose, but the truth is that deeper alignment often begins with disruption. When the old structures fall away, it's not because you're failing, it's because they are too small for the next version of you. The endings you resist are sometimes the blessings you need. They push you toward new direction, new identity, and new strength. But because the process doesn't feel gentle or predictable, you misinterpret it as life working against you. Alignment rarely feels like peace at the beginning. It feels like confusion, like uncertainty, like being pulled away from what you thought you wanted. It exposes the places where you've been settling, pretending, or holding on to what no longer resonates. It forces you to examine what you've been clinging to out of comfort rather than truth. Change disrupts your patterns so that you can see them clearly. It pulls away what is misaligned so that what is meant for you can find you without obstruction. When everything feels heavy or unstable, something deeper is happening beneath the surface. The internal version of you, your values, your intuition, your desires, may have outgrown the external life you're living. The mismatch creates friction, and friction is often the first sign of transformation. What appears as breaking is often a breaking open. What feels like loss is actually redirection. What feels like falling behind is a hidden acceleration towards something more genuine. The pieces of your life are not collapsing to leave you empty. They are shifting to create a foundation that matches who you are becoming. And while the process may feel painful, disorienting, or unfair, one day you will look back and recognize that what felt like falling apart was the moment everything began to fall into place. The real shift begins when you stop abandoning yourself, because every meaningful change in your life depends on your willingness to finally stand with who you are instead of against yourself. For years you may have learned to silence your needs, dismiss your feelings, and shrink your voice just to keep the peace or meet expectations that were never truly yours. You might have convinced yourself that your dreams were unrealistic, that your desires were inconvenient, that your boundaries were too much. Little by little, without even noticing, you stepped away from yourself, choosing comfort over truth, approval over authenticity, survival over self-respect. But at some point, the cost of abandoning yourself becomes too heavy to carry. The turning point arrives the moment you decide to return to yourself. It doesn't happen in a dramatic declaration. It begins quietly, in the small choice to listen to your own voice again. It begins in the moment you say no to something that drains you or yes to something that lights a spark in your chest. It begins the moment you stop betraying your intuition just to fit into spaces that don't honor you. When you stop abandoning yourself, you stop negotiating your worth, you stop tolerating what breaks your spirit, you stop diluting your identity to make others comfortable, you begin to rebuild trust in your own inner wisdom. The part of you that always knew what you needed, even when you refused to hear it. This shift is powerful because it reorders your entire life from the inside out. Suddenly, relationships look different. Goals look different. Dreams feel possible again. You start making choices that align with your well-being instead of your fears. You start moving toward the life you want, rather than clinging to the life you've outgrown. And with each moment of self-honesty, your inner world becomes stronger, clearer, and more grounded. You realize that loyalty to yourself is the foundation for every form of growth you've ever desired. Stopping the cycle of self-abandonment also means embracing the uncomfortable truth that not everyone will understand or support your return to yourself. But that is part of the transformation. The life meant for you cannot take shape if you keep betraying your own needs to maintain old patterns. The real shift begins when you choose yourself. Not out of selfishness, but out of recognition that your deepest potential only unlocks when you stop leaving yourself behind. When you finally stand with yourself, life stands with you. And now you stand at the doorway of a new version of yourself. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because you did. You listened, you showed up. You chose to face what you once avoided, to honor the pull toward your future, to trust courage over clarity, and to stop walking away from your own truth. This is the moment everything begins to shift, not with noise but with intention, not with perfection but with presence. So take a breath, step forward, walk toward the life that's been waiting for you to finally claim it. You are no longer living as a shadow of who you could be. You are becoming the person you were always meant to rise into. And from this point on, every step you take is a declaration.